Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story where a company's refusal to treat an overworked IT specialist fairly results in a massive company-wide fallout. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Not going to pay overtime? Think again. I was drinking with a good friend one night, and he said, "Boy, have I got a story that you'll like." It wasn't his story, but his brother's, and I sat with him and got the details. Buckle up, it's a good one. Let's call him Bob. Bob has been fiddling with computers since he was a kid and knows them pretty well. As with most IT people, he's moved from job to job. The employer he worked for was a service/distribution company, and there were 2 IT employees. The company was located in Ontario, Canada. About 3 years ago, Bob's employer decided to modernize their software. They had separate programs for dispatching, for inventory, for payroll and finances, and it was complicated moving information from one program to the other. They decided to get an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning program, and Bob recommended one that he knew inside out from a previous employer. For those of you who don't know, an ERP program handles everything: purchase orders, sales, inventory, personnel, vendors, customers, all of it. You can run a report to find out which customer has bought the most part ABC in the last year, which salesman has improved his numbers the most, which vendor has the fastest delivery time, which shipper packed the most orders. Everyone in the company used the ERP program, but it was very complicated, and they used the aspects of it that related to their position. For example, the receiver would accept a shipment, verify the quantity, confirm it was received, and the inventory stats would be available to the salespeople if they wanted to look up how many were on hand. The receiver didn't care what the price was or who the vendor was. He just did his job. Bob was run ragged during the implementation process, but he managed to train most of the employees on their aspects, and after a few months, everything was running fairly smoothly. Bob still got tickets for tweaks in the operation of the software and occasional hardware IT issues. Then the company decided to expand their footprint and was marketing into different time zones. That messed things up. Atlantic Canada is 90 minutes early, so if someone sent an email or an order at 8 a.m. their time, it would arrive at 6:30 a.m. Ontario time. Pacific Canada is 3 hours late, so an email sent at 3 p.m. Vancouver time would arrive at 6 p.m. This stretched out the day, so many staff came in early and worked late. Bob would arrive at 8 a.m., and there would be people that demanded his immediate assistance and were annoyed that he didn't respond instantly, even though their request was submitted before his start time. Same with late in the day. His phone would ring at dinner time with people that wanted help right now. They decided to stagger his and his IT colleagues' shift times. Bob would start at 6 a.m. and work till 2:30, and his colleague would start at 10:30 a.m. and work till 7 p.m. Bob's colleague had kids and refused the shift change. The employer insisted, the colleague quit. That meant that Bob was the only person in the IT department. The employer said they would look to hire a new IT guy, but they had trouble finding one that knew the ERP system, and they were offering well under a market value salary. Bob asked for a raise and was denied. Then he wanted overtime, and the employer told him that as an IT specialist, he was exempt from overtime laws in Ontario. Bob looked it up, and the employer was correct. This went on for some time, and he knew lots of IT people socially. They told him what the company was offering, and Bob knew that they wouldn't find another tech. Things went downhill from there. Bob would get chewed out if he missed a call or an email, no matter what time it came in. He had to train new hires in the ERP system, as well as take care of the hardware. He asked repeatedly for better compensation and was denied. So he planned to get a new job. Now here's the revenge. Bob had access to the entirety of the ERP program. When a user signed up, the time was logged, and even if they didn't sign out, after 15 minutes it would log them out anyway. Everyone in the company was on salary, and many of them came in early and stayed late. Ontario labor law states that even salaried workers are entitled to overtime after 44 hours a week, unless they were managers or supervisors. So Bob jumped into the program and ran a report for each employee that wasn't a manager, all the way back to when the ERP program was started. Then he reached out to an employment lawyer and got the okay to refer employees to him. Bob lined up another job, and after he left, every employee in the company got an email with an Excel sheet showing the hours they had put in past 44 hours a week. The subject line said, "You're legally entitled to overtime pay," and the body of the email was the lawyer's name. The crap hit the fan. Almost every employee authorized the lawyer to negotiate with the company on their behalf, and the company had to pay a ton of money. All the company had to do was pay Bob for the extra work he put in. Instead, they had to pay almost everyone. They had to pay everyone, no two ways about it. Bro did the right thing. I don't consider it revenge. It was justice for the other employees. And our second story. My stepsister-in-law wanted me to leave everything I have to her kids. My step, SIL, is the kind of person who couldn't fathom why any woman would not want to become a mother. She's always been really critical of my choice to be child-free. She always made some catty comments about how I'll never know true happiness. However, when I saw her a few days ago at my dad's birthday party, she seemed to have done a complete 180. She told me again and again how she's supportive of my life choices and shouldn't have kids if I don't want them. I didn't know what to make of this. I just said something like, "Oh, okay, thanks." But my gut told me that there was more to her sudden acceptance than she was letting on. The phone call I received from her yesterday proved my gut instincts right. She started off with the usual, "How are you? We need to get together soon" bullcrap. Then she began to not so subtly inquire about my finances. What sort of savings do I have? How much I make every year, etc. I, of course, got irritated and asked her what she meant, and to come to the effing point, she giggled and replied, "Well, since you won't be having kids of your own, why don't you make my children your heirs?" I didn't know whether to laugh like a maniacal villain or just get pissed. I decided to let her go on. Sister-in-law, as you know, your brother and I are planning to have at least 4 kids. They already have 1. So when they're born, you can leave equal portions of your estate to all of them. Me. Sister-in-law, you and that boyfriend of yours say you don't even want to get married, so it's not like you have to leave anything for him, right? Me. Really? Sister-in-law, yeah, so I thought instead of your life savings going to waste, they can just go to your family. Me. After I'm dead. Sister-in-law, yes. Me. Do you plan to make it look like suicide or an accident? Sister-in-law, what? Me. Since you've planned all of this, you must have made some plans to off me, right? Go on, tell me what it is. Is it something super creative and unusual? Sister-in-law, angry in the way that douchebags get when you call them out on their BS? How could you think that? I only suggested this so you wouldn't have the burden of worrying about what would happen to your money when you're on your deathbed. Me, aren't you a sweetheart? I'll spare you the burden of worrying about me worrying about my money by leaving everything I have to charities that I support. She started blabbering again, but before she could form a full sentence, I hung up. I also called my dad to let him know about this. This morning, I received a call from my stepbrother, and he apologized profusely for what his wife had said. I told him if she ever pulled anything like this again, it'll be the last time I speak to them. Well, that'll be a pretty awkward phone call your sister-in-law has to give the assassin, where she has to explain that the deal is off. And our last story. Neighbor claiming our house wants to demolish it. I woke up this morning to a frantic call from my wife. Our neighbor has moved heavy yellow demolition equipment onto our property, ripped out our hedge, demolished our garden shed, and was apparently getting ready to move on to our garage and house. The kicker? I'm at the other end of the country for work, and after 4 hours of driving, I'm currently sitting at a motorway service station trying to process this while taking a leak of all things. I'm about to jump back in the car and continue home and confront him. My wife called the police, but they said it's a civil issue. We're at a total loss here. For some context, we moved into our detached house 2 years ago. It's mortgaged with a major bank, and when we bought it, our now-deceased solicitor confirmed that there was some sort of planning permission application from the neighborhood to demolish our house and build an annex connected to his property. but our solicitor assured us it was just an application and the neighbor wanted to buy the house at the time, but the deal never happened. The deeds are definitely in our name, there's no question about that. Now this neighbor claims that since he has planning permission, he has the right to demolish our property. I called him, and while there's a bit of a language barrier, he's completely insistent that this planning permission means he can just bulldoze whatever he wants on our land. He doesn't seem to grasp the fact that planning permission doesn't mean ownership. I've contacted a couple of solicitors, but no one has called me back yet. I'm heading home now to sort this out, but I feel like I'm walking into a nightmare. Update. Hey Reddit, here's the update I promised. It's been an absolutely wild day. After another grueling couple of hours on the road, I made it home, and the sight that greeted me was, well, you can imagine. My shed was in pieces, the hedge was a distant memory, and the demolition equipment was still there, parked right in front of my garage. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. First thing I did was get the police involved again. This time I wasn't taking no for an answer. I insisted that this was not just a civil issue. The neighbor was destroying my property, plain and simple. After some back and forth, the police agreed to send an officer over to assess the situation. In the meantime, I managed to get a hold of a solicitor who called me back, thank God. They confirmed exactly what I thought. Planning permission doesn't give anyone the right to demolish someone else's property. The deeds are in our name, and what the neighbor was doing was a blatant act of trespass and criminal damage. When the police arrived, I explained everything, and after some discussion, they finally stepped in. They spoke to the neighbor and explained in no uncertain terms that his planning permission didn't mean a thing without ownership of the land. The demolition equipment had to go, and any further damage would be treated as criminal. The neighbor, clearly rattled by the police intervention, reluctantly agreed to back off. He even had to arrange for the equipment to be removed from my property immediately. We're now in the process of working with the solicitor to take legal action for the damage to our shed and garden. The neighbor's facing fines and may be on the hook for compensation. At the end of the day, we still have our house, and this nightmare is finally coming to an end. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.